He looked straight into the camera and said, "Before anything else, I need to talk about Jesus." The host froze. The crew panicked. Millions of viewers sat up, stunned. Why would the world's most logical man speak about faith on live TV? And what he said next left an entire nation in tears. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The studio lights glowed warm as Elon Musk stepped onto the set, exchanging a few lighthearted comments with the host before taking his seat. He looked relaxed, even casual, dressed in a dark jacket over a simple shirt. The energy backstage was brisk but familiar. This was supposed to be a standard segment, another conversation about AI, space exploration, and the future of technology. The audience settled in. The crew gave final cues. The floor manager raised his hand, counted down, and the red light blinked on. "Welcome back," the host said with a practiced smile. "We're joined today by Elon Musk, CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, here to talk about the latest developments in artificial intelligence." And Elon shifted slightly in his chair. His eyes met the host's with unusual seriousness. "Before we start," Elon said, his voice measured, quieter than usual, "there's something personal I need to share." The host blinked, hesitated. That wasn't in the notes. A few people backstage looked up from their screens. One camera operator instinctively zoomed in. The teleprompter paused. The atmosphere changed. "Something I've been thinking about a lot," Elon added, folding his hands. "And it's not about rockets or robots." The host leaned forward. "All right, what is it?" Elon took a breath. "I want to talk about Jesus." Elon leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees, his voice steady but softer than before. "I didn't grow up with faith," he began. "It wasn't part of our dinner table conversations. My focus was always on science, on what could be proven. But recently, I found myself revisiting old questions." The host stayed silent, giving Elon space. "I started reading about the historical Jesus," Elon continued. "Not just the image people have in their heads, but the actual man who lived 2,000 years ago. What struck me wasn't just that he was a religious figure, but that he challenged the very systems people thought were unchangeable." The control room buzzed with activity. Producers whispered into headsets. Social media feeds began lighting up. Elon Musk and Jesus trended simultaneously worldwide. Films taught things that completely flipped the values of the world around him, Elon said. He elevated the weak, embraced the rejected, and told people to love their enemies in a world built on revenge. The host adjusted in his seat, visibly affected by the unexpected shift. Elon looked down for a moment, then back at the camera. "I'm not just talking about history," he said. "It's not just history, it's wisdom." 8 months ago, Elon found himself standing alone beneath the stars. It was late past midnight, and he had just left a long strategy meeting that, by all measures, was a success. But something about that evening unsettled him. The stars stretched endlessly above, brilliant and silent, and he couldn't shake the question echoing in his chest. What really matters? He'd asked himself that question before, but this time it felt urgent, heavy in a way it never had. The accolades, the headlines, the accomplishments, they suddenly seemed fragile, temporary. He went home, unable to sleep, and found himself pacing his study. That's when he noticed the old Bible on his bookshelf, one he didn't even remember placing there. Almost without thinking, he pulled it down and let it fall open. The page landed on the Gospel of Matthew. His eyes were drawn to one section, underlined faintly in pencil. "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." He stared at the verse. Read it again, and again. "Blessed are the meek." It was the opposite of everything he had been taught about power, success, leadership. It contradicted the logic of Silicon Valley, and yet it made something inside him pause. That night he read more. Quietly, slowly, the Sermon on the Mount challenged him in ways no scientific journal or leadership book ever had. He didn't understand all of it, but he couldn't look away. It felt ancient and alive at the same time. Every word pulled him deeper. In the days that followed, he found himself thinking less about market trends and more about meaning. Not just innovation, but intention. Not just exploration, but purpose. Looking back now, he told the host, that night, something shifted in me. The lights in the studio seemed sharper now, the air more charged. The host, though composed, leaned forward with subtle tension. Elon, he began cautiously, you're known as one of the most analytical minds of our time, deeply rational, evidence-driven. Isn't religion, especially Christianity, inherently at odds with science? Elon didn't flinch. He looked directly at the host, his voice calm and clear. That's a fair question, but I'd challenge the assumption behind it. Some of the greatest scientific minds in history, Isaac Newton, Blaise Pascal, even Georges Lemaitre, who proposed the Big Bang, were people of deep faith. Faith and science aren't enemies. They ask different kinds of questions. The host blinked, slightly surprised. Elon continued, science asks how. Faith often asks why. And I don't think one cancels out the other. Viewers across the world leaned closer to their screens. This wasn't the Elon Musk they were used to, not the bold disruptor of markets or mastermind of Martian plans. This was someone who had stepped into vulnerable territory with purpose. So, the host pressed, trying to catch a contradiction, you don't see this interest in Jesus as a rejection of science? No, Elon said. I see it as a complement to it. The universe is vast, beautiful, and mysterious, but I've come to realize that not all truths can be put on a spreadsheet. The control room was buzzing. Commentators were readying their reactions. But Elon was just getting started. I approached the teachings of Jesus like I do most things, critically, analytically. But what I found was something deeper than data or historical critique. I found a kind of moral clarity, a framework for human dignity that's hard to find in algorithms or engineering. The host shifted in his chair. But are you saying you believe Jesus was divine? Are you converting? Elon smiled slightly. I'm saying I'm exploring, honestly. I'm not here to put on a show or claim enlightenment. I'm simply paying attention to the questions that won't go away. But surely, the host replied, you must admit that many people will say this is just a phase, or worse, a publicity stunt. I expected that, Elon replied calmly. People are suspicious of change, but that's never stopped me before. I've built rockets that explode and companies that nearly failed. I've lived with doubt. This is no different. On social media, the reaction was explosive. Elon and Jesus trended globally. Viewers typed furiously, is this real? What is happening? I didn't expect to cry tonight. The host picked up his cue cards, then set them down again. What is it about Jesus specifically that draws you in? The Sermon on the Mount, Elon answered without hesitation. It's the most radical speech I've ever read. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. Don't seek praise, give in secret, be meek, be merciful, be pure in heart. It flips everything modern culture values upside down. Isn't that naive, though? The host countered. The world is harsh. How do those teachings survive? Elon leaned forward slightly. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we've built a world that rewards the wrong things. And maybe Jesus wasn't naive at all. Maybe he was seeing something truer than what most of us dare to look at. The studio grew quiet. Even the host paused for a beat too long. "And you believe this applies to your life now?" he asked finally. Elon nodded. "Absolutely. Some truths don't fit into formulas." The host paused for a long moment, then leaned in with the question everyone watching had been waiting for. "Elon, you're talking about Jesus' teachings, his ethics, his wisdom. But what about the supernatural claims, the miracles, the resurrection, the divinity? Are you saying you believe all that?" Elon's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. More contemplative now, even vulnerable. "I've wrestled with those questions," he said, "a lot." The studio fell silent. Even the hum of equipment seemed to dim. "I come from a background of data, logic, systems. I've spent my life building things I can measure, test, predict. So when I started reading the Gospels, my instinct was to filter everything through that lens." The host nodded slowly. "And what did you find?" "At first," Elon admitted, "I dismissed the miracles. Water into wine, walking on water, resurrection. They felt like legends, stories added later for effect. But then I realized maybe I was asking the wrong questions." He looked out at the studio audience, then directly into the camera. "I don't know if every supernatural detail is historically verifiable, but I've become a lot more cautious about calling things impossible. Because if this universe has taught me anything, it's that reality is far stranger than we understand." The host raised an eyebrow. "You mean, like what?" Elon gestured with one hand. "Quantum entanglement, dark energy, consciousness, even time itself. We still don't know what those things really are. Our understanding of the universe is incomplete, beautiful, but incomplete." The host shifted slightly in his seat, his voice softer now. "So you're open to the idea that miracles could be real?" "I'm open," Elon said. "In a way I wasn't before. Not because I've abandoned skepticism, but because I've learned that humility matters more. Humility in the face of the unknown." A hush fell over the audience. Phones across the country buzzed with live reactions. Viewers commented in disbelief. "Is this really Elon Musk? I've never seen him like this." The host leaned forward again. "But the resurrection? That's the core claim of Christianity, life after death. A man rising from the grave. Doesn't that cross a line for someone like you?" Elon didn't flinch. "I used to think so," he said. "But now, I think it's more complex. I don't know if it happened exactly the way it's described, but I also don't know that it didn't. Something happened, something powerful enough to turn terrified followers into world changers, something that transformed history. That deserves my attention, even if I can't explain it yet." The host studied him. "So, are you saying you believe in God now?" Elon exhaled long and slow. "I'm saying I'm listening, I'm watching. I'm not shutting the door just because something doesn't fit inside my formulas." A long silence followed. Then Elon turned fully to face the camera. "If Jesus taught us anything, it's to seek truth without fear." He didn't raise his voice, he didn't gesture, but his words landed with weight, like a stone dropped into a still lake. More silence, no one moved. The host finally spoke again, his voice almost reverent. "That's not what we expected to hear tonight." Elon smiled gently. "It's not what I expected to say." The host glanced at his tablet, then back up. "And where does that leave you now?" Elon paused. His eyes didn't blink. "I'm still seeking, but I'm not turning back." The host leaned back in his chair, silent, giving Elon room. It was clear something deeper was still unfolding. Elon took a breath and looked down for a moment, as if searching for the right words. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted, softer, more exposed. "There was a night," he began, "maybe 8 months ago, when I couldn't sleep. It was one of those nights when everything just catches up to you. The pressure, the public image, the weight of responsibility, rockets, satellites, markets, media. It all felt strangely hollow. He paused. The studio remained still. I walked outside and just stared at the stars. I've done that thousands of times. Mapping trajectories, calculating distances. But this time, I wasn't thinking about where we could go. I was wondering why we're here. He glanced over at the host, then back toward the camera. For some reason, I picked up a Bible that had been on my shelf for years, just sitting there. I didn't even remember where I got it. I flipped it open and landed on something familiar. A verse I'd probably seen quoted a dozen times, but never really absorbed. His voice tightened slightly. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? That verse, he said quietly, hit me harder than any physics formula ever has, harder than anything I've read in systems theory or game theory or quantum mechanics. It wasn't just a poetic line. It was a mirror. He looked off to the side, as if reliving the moment. I've spent my life building, striving, pushing. I've tried to solve the hardest problems I could find. But that night, for the first time, I asked myself, for what? Not in a cynical way, but in a raw, honest way. The host sat silently, giving space. I started rereading Jesus' words, not as religion, but as relationship. As a conversation. Not someone telling me what to believe, but someone inviting me to rethink what matters. He leaned forward now, elbows on his knees. Jesus talked about leaving the 99 to find the one, about washing feet instead of demanding praise, about loving enemies and forgiving debt. It wasn't guilt that gripped me that night. It wasn't fear. It was grace. The words hovered. I realized I'd spent years trying to prove something, to the world, maybe even to myself. And yet here was this ancient voice whispering a different message. Not you are not enough, but you are loved. And that changes everything. The host exhaled slowly. That's beautiful, he said, nearly under his breath. Elon looked up. It's strange. I used to see belief as a crutch, something for people who couldn't face reality. But now I see faith, real faith, as courage. The courage to face meaning, to face purpose, to face your own soul without flinching. He glanced again at the host. I'm not saying I figured it all out. I haven't. I'm not a preacher or a theologian. I'm just a man who's seen the edge of the universe and realized the most important frontier is inside. A moment of silence passed between them, and then Elon said it again, quietly but with certainty. It wasn't guilt, it was grace. The host leaned forward again, curiosity deepening. So how has all this shaped your current work, your thinking about the future? Elon took a moment before answering. In the world I operate in, artificial intelligence, robotics, space travel, we talk a lot about alignment, aligning machines with human values, making sure superintelligence doesn't go off the rails. But lately, I've started asking a deeper question. He folded his hands slowly. What values are we aligning to? The host raised an eyebrow. We assume we know what those values should be, Elon continued. But do we? We focus so much on capability, on making smarter, faster systems. But capability without moral clarity is dangerous. He paused. That's where Jesus' teachings have surprised me most. They're not vague, feel-good platitudes. They're shockingly specific. Love your neighbor. Forgive those who hurt you. Serve the least among you. Tell the truth. Don't use people. He looked at the host directly. The greatest alignment problem isn't technological. It's moral. The control room went still. The host let the words hang. Elon continued, now with quiet intensity. We've built tools that can amplify whatever we put into them. Algorithms, weapons, currencies. They magnify our intentions. So the question becomes, what are we feeding them? He leaned back slightly. If we feed these systems with greed, ego, and conquest, they will reflect that back to us, at scale. But if we root them in compassion, in service, in the kind of love Jesus taught, then maybe, just maybe, we have a future worth building. The host nodded slowly. So, spiritual wisdom as a design principle? Yes, Elon said. And not just any wisdom. I'm talking about teachings that have lasted thousands of years, ideas tested not in labs, but in real human lives. Jesus didn't speak about the mechanics of the universe. He spoke about the mechanics of the heart. The audience watched, spellbound as Elon's voice softened. I used to think moral clarity would come from data, from pattern recognition. But now I realize true clarity comes from conscience, from the willingness to ask hard questions about what matters, and then live as if the answers are real. The host seemed moved, even reverent now. And is that where you are today? I'm still learning, Elon said simply. Still seeking, but I'm more certain than ever that wisdom isn't obsolete. It's essential. The camera slowly zoomed in as he finished. Even engineers need a moral compass. The host glanced at his screen one final time. Elon, many viewers are still asking, why now? Why share this so publicly? Some say it's a rebrand, a strategy. Elon smiled gently, the tension in his shoulders visibly softened. This isn't branding, it's becoming. The words echoed in the studio like a quiet bell. He turned slightly toward the camera. For most of my life, I've been focused on what's next, the next breakthrough, the next product, the next mission. But this journey has made me ask a different kind of question. What lasts? He looked down briefly, then back up, calmer now. Some things don't show up in earnings reports. Moments with my children. Quiet generosity. A conversation that changes someone's perspective. These things don't make headlines, but they matter more than most of what does. The host didn't speak, only nodded. Elon continued, his voice lower now. I've started spending more time with my family. Not just being present, but being available. Listening. Laughing. That's new for me. I've also begun giving more. Quietly, not through foundations or press releases, but through simple acts of care where they're needed most. He looked into the camera once more, his expression clear and open. To anyone watching, don't wait for a crisis to explore what matters most. You don't need all the answers to start asking better questions. The studio, once bustling, had grown still. The host finally spoke, his voice softer than before. Elon, I think I speak for everyone when I say, this has been the most human conversation we've ever had on this show. There was a long pause, a silence that didn't need to be filled. Then Elon said, almost as if to himself, the deepest revolution is always internal. The cameras didn't cut right away. They lingered just a little longer, capturing something rare. A moment of peace, reflection, and a quiet kind of hope. Later that evening, the lights in Elon's house were low. The energy of the studio, the flood of questions, and the media noise had faded into something quieter, more still. He stood in the doorway of his son's bedroom, watching as the boy pulled the blanket up to his chin. Elon crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, brushing a hand gently over his son's hair. Dad, the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you believe now? Elon paused for a long moment, feeling the weight and simplicity of the question. I believe, he began slowly, in asking questions that matter, in seeking truth, even when it's uncomfortable, and in loving people, the way Jesus taught us to. His son smiled sleepily. That sounds good. It is, Elon whispered. It really is. As he turned off the light and stood in the hallway, he looked up, past the ceiling, past the roof, to the stars beyond. For all the worlds he had imagined, there was something grounding about this moment. Not a rocket launch, not a public speech, just a quiet commitment to live differently, to love more deeply, to seek more honestly, because sometimes the boldest leaps aren't across space, but into the soul. If this story moved you, subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us what truly matters: truth, love, courage, and the quiet power of transformation. Your journey starts here.